Chapter 1. The Man Who Lives in the Dark. He shouldn't have gone back to that house at night, but intuition, that vague premonition his mother always told him not to ignore, led James to the iron gate as the mist was just beginning to settle. The house lay silent, as if it were hiding something, the dim light from the upper windows like a sentinel eye in the ancient stone face. James stood there, his breath mingling with the mist, his eyes fixed on the small room at the end of the garden, the room where he had definitely seen a glimmer of light that morning, the room where the old gatekeeper had stepped out. His gaze not that of a gatekeeper, but of its owner. And now he wanted to know the truth, not out of curiosity, but because he had a feeling he was being pulled into a game bigger than these Edwardian tiled walls. The wooden door clicked open as James turned the handle. It was unlocked. No one locked such an innocuous place. In the darkness, the smell of old paper, ash, and something like old skin hit him. He entered. No sound, no breath, until he heard a creaking sound, not from the ceiling, from behind. James turned, and there he was. Mr. Listerdale, the man who had been declared missing, whom all of London believed had died abroad in a car accident. He was wearing wrinkled pajamas, faded leather slippers, and a steaming cup of tea in his hand. "You," he said, his voice hoarse but clear, "should not know this." Silence fell like a velvet curtain. James swallowed, his eyes darting over the teacup, over the man's shirt. No badge, no identification, but he knew. It was him. "You—" Why, James asked, his voice echoing off the cold walls. Listerdale sat down in a worn armchair. "No one would expect to find me here. That is the first condition of survival." Survive what? He did not answer at once. He just looked at James as if he were weighing a piece of merchandise. After a moment, he put down his teacup, leaned back, and said, "Do you want the truth, or just a nice story?" James did not reply. He laughed, dry as an indictment. "So listen. I didn't disappear. I ran away because I knew if I remained in the public eye, my whole family would die." Chapter 2. Confession in the dark. Running away from who James asked, his voice strained like an overstretched string. The pieces of the puzzle in his head, the strange rental house, the unidentified family, the mysterious doorman now began to screech a suspicious tune. Listerdale did not answer at once. He looked at his shadow on the floor, as if that blurred form were the clearest evidence of a life he wished to bury. "Do you know," he began, his voice even, "that there are truths that, if brought to light, would shake an entire society?" James nodded, though he was not sure he understood. But Listerdale continued, as if recounting a dream no one believed. "We live in neat houses, dress neatly, laugh and talk as if everything is fine. But behind that, there are things you can't imagine. Finances, power, ambition, and even lives. I was a part of it. Then I knew too much. I became redundant. And you chose to disappear?" James asked, half surprised, half skeptical. Listerdale nodded. "I engineered my own death, an arranged accident in Biarritz. I paid for my freedom with the loss of my identity. Why not tell your family? Your daughter, your wife?" Listerdale looked straight at James. His eyes were cold, hurt, and empty. Because if I live, they will die. James took a step back. The words didn't sound like those of a father shirking responsibility. They were a warning, a sentence. Listerdale reached across the table, pulled out a yellowed sheaf of papers, and placed them in front of James. This is what they're hiding: reports, letters, copies of contracts. If I hand them over, a lot of people will collapse, but I don't dare. James took the paper. Names, offshore account numbers, statements of money transfers through politicians, a string of so-called justified suicides. James shivered. And now he asked. Listerdale smiled sadly. I can't control it anymore. Someone is tracking me. Maybe you're the one they sent. I don't work for anyone, James said, though he was starting to feel cold inside. I just find everything so strange. Strange is good, said the old man, standing up. Strange is a sign that you are still able to think. As James turned to leave, Listerdale called back. If you continue, don't believe anything that is easy to believe. And don't come back if you are not ready to face the real killer. James left the house near midnight. As he walked, the wind swirled fallen leaves around his feet. In his pockets were secrets that could kill a nation or himself. Chapter 3, The Name on the List. The next morning, James sat in his rented room in Kensington, the cold November light streaming through the thin curtains as if to expose his dark thoughts. On the table was the file Mr. Listerdale had given him, sheets of paper filled with numbers, names, and notes written in a shaky hand. He tried to keep his mind clear with 2 cups of strong coffee, but it wasn't the caffeine that haunted him. It was a name, Sir Reginald Brackley. First on the list. The note beside it contained only 3 words: silent. James did a quick search in the electronic library. Brackley, veteran politician, former Undersecretary of State, died a year ago. Fell from a hotel balcony during a business trip to Geneva. Case ruled suicide in a state of emotional turmoil. No further questions. He followed the articles, some of which had long since disappeared into the archives. Something didn't add up. A man of great influence, with no signs of depression, choosing to run headlong into the street in the middle of an important conference. James' notes need to meet relatives or old colleagues. He began with a name that appeared in an old interview article: Annabel Brackley, Reginald's sister, a history lecturer now living in Cambridge. Annabel met him in the little garden, where the white daisies were melancholy in the evening mist. She was dressed in black, her face still beautiful in the stern way of someone who has lived long in the shadow of an inexplicable past. I don't usually meet strangers, she said, her eyes studying James as if searching for any ties to the press or the government. I just want to know about your brother, about his death. Did you ever believe he killed himself? She was silent for a long time, then shook her head slightly. No, she replied. Reginald is not a weak man. He is practical, cold, and probably too smart to fall apart like that. Is there someone he is afraid of? Or what keeps him silent? Annabel glanced at James suspiciously, then stood up and disappeared into the house. When she returned, she carried a handwritten letter. The paper browned. He sent this to me the day before he died. The police never found out, and I don't know whether to believe it or be afraid. James opened the letter. If anything happens to you, know that it wasn't your choice. You're in too deep, and there's probably no getting out. There are people whose names I should never speak. James read and reread each line, then folded the letter. Are you willing to cooperate? He asked, his voice lower. I think this isn't just about a dead person. It's about something very alive and very dangerous. Annabelle nodded slowly. I've been waiting for someone for a year. The church clock chimed in the distance, like the beat of a game that had begun late. And James knew he had entered an investigation whose exit was no longer in his hands. Chapter 4. The Untouchable Man. The light rain fell, as if to remind James that winter was coming, not only in the air, but in the things he was pursuing, silent, cold, and dangerous. They sat in a small cafe near King's Cross Station. Annabelle pushed the old, discolored paper toward James. He saw the second name on Listerdale's list, C.D. Brackmore. Caption in bold, oblique strokes, communication, inaccessible, guarded. Brackmore, Annabelle repeated. Used to be a close friend of my brother's, but all contact was cut off around 1948. No one knows why. James nodded. I looked it up. The name doesn't appear in any public records, but it is mentioned in a Defense Policy Council document, a section reserved for top-secret security clearances. And you got it, she asked, surprised. I have a friend who works in the archives. Brackmore is now the honorary chairman of a private foundation, the Sundial Trust. It sounds innocuous, but they have stakes in defense biotechnology projects, media, and even control of educational content. James laid out an old photograph on the table, a dinner party, attended by politicians and financiers. In the middle was a white-haired man, stern and unsmiling Brackmore. On one side was Sir Reginald Brackley, dead. On the other was a face James did not recognize, but his instinct told him that man was on the list. I have access to Brackmore, James said quietly. He's going to be at a private meeting next Saturday, a fundraising dinner for the Art Museum in Covent Garden. Tickets are strictly controlled, but I can get in under a different name. Annabelle narrowed her eyes. Do you think you can talk to him alone? No. I think I'll watch. Record. Find out what he knows and who's with him. On Saturday night, James appeared in a perfect tuxedo, a black tie with an old silver pin, the only thing he had left of his late father. He walked into the grand lobby of the white stone building, where crystal lights reflected off tall mirrors and the polite smiles of hundreds of faces. And then Brackmore appeared. He walked slowly, as if every step was measured. Two men in black suits flanked him, keeping an eye on anyone who approached. James kept a distance, always visible but not conspicuous. Amidst the music, the clinking of glasses, and the vague greetings, Brackmore suddenly turned into a side room, a room no one was allowed to enter, except a woman following behind him. James stiffened. The woman, the one who had appeared with Listerdale in the old photograph, and he realized now it was no stranger. That is Diana Montclair, a senior advisor on international strategy, who disappeared from the press 3 years ago after a car accident in Paris. Holmes, she's dead, James whispered, his hand clutching the small recorder hidden in his pocket. But Diana was still alive, and walked through the closed door with the untouchable man. That evening, when James returned to his apartment, he played the recording again. The clink of glasses, a faint laugh, Then a deep male voice from Brackmore. They started digging. He didn't die like planned. And that list got out. And then a female voice. Cold as steel. I will handle it, like I did with Reginald. James couldn't breathe. List. Reginald. Process. He knew he had crossed the line. Someone is erasing their tracks. And you are the next one to be erased. Chapter 5. The Introvert in the Dark. When James returned to his apartment early the next morning, the first thing he felt wasn't exhaustion. It was unease. The door hadn't been broken into, the lock intact. But when he inserted the key and pushed the door open, all was quiet. The wristwatch on the table is no longer in its original place. The window mat is a few inches off. His hand clenched instinctively. Nothing had been taken, at least not the obvious ones. But his copy of the Listerdale list, the only one he kept in a secret drawer under his desk, was gone. James rushed to check. The wood was undamaged, the mechanism still locked properly. But the list's 7 names, handwritten in black ink, with his own notes in red pen, was now blank. No one else knew it was there. Except one person. Annabelle. James wanted to push the thought away, but his mind worked logically, not emotionally. He opened the second drawer, still filled with copies of the extra files. The little note Annabelle had written when they had discussed Brackmore was still there. So who? James's flat was on the 3rd floor of a renovated old building in Bloomsbury. He stepped out onto the back balcony, which overlooked a lavender courtyard. A scratch on the wooden window frame made him pause. Someone has come through here. He grabbed his phone and turned on the homemade security cameras he'd installed in the hallway and backyard entrance. The tapes from the night were blank. All files have been deleted. Not an amateur. James opened the main computer. It was infected with spyware. He had no time to investigate it. He had only one choice: disappear. That afternoon, a middle-aged man in a felt hat and a gray trench coat walked into an old printing shop on the outskirts of Peckham. No one recognized James. He had changed his name in papers, and he had taken with him the most important thing. He had left a copy of the recording from that evening. He meets Rupert, a data analyst who once worked for the Department of Defense's Information Routing Project, now living anonymously in rooms filled with wires and opaque screens. James took out the recording device. Voice analysis. I need to verify that the woman is really Diana Montclair. And I need to know who edited the original recording. Rupert frowned. Edit. James nodded. The end. It was cut off. I never stopped the machine, but someone somehow put in a blank. 10 seconds gone. Rupert blinked. Then you weren't just being watched. They were standing right next to you. An hour later, the screen shows the audio sample analysis. Result: 97.3% match to Diana Montclair's voice. Intercepted clip, created by spy device near recording range. James sat still. That was right. Diana is alive. Brackmore not only knows he's complicit, and someone's following him closer than he thinks. Rupert looked at James, his voice hoarse. Listen, man, this is bigger than some political case. This is the kind of secret they bury in a stone tower and never let out. If you continue, you'll either disappear or they'll stage an accident that makes it look like you killed yourself. James smiled, coldly. Then I have to go one step ahead. That night, James left a voicemail for Annabelle. It wasn't long. Just one sentence. If I disappear, go to where your brother lived in Venice. There's a lock on the wall painting, and the key is the last name on the list. He hung up. Outside, the sound of car horns faded away. London lights came on. All traces are being erased. And James decided if they wanted to play a game of shadow, he would be the one to light the last door. Chapter 6. The Monastery in the Mist. Venice was not what it remembered. The November fog hung over the city like a deathly silver curtain, blotting out its usual rich colors. Everything was dark and cold, as if the city were keeping a secret. And James knew, this time, it was more than just a romantic affair floating through the canals. He arrived on the island of San Giorgio Maggiore by chartered boat alone, without a rower, on paper. It was just a short trip for a writer looking to gather material for a new novel. But James was looking for something else. Annabelle's brother had lived in the island monastery when he withdrew from all contact right after he was implicated in the secret investigation into the dismantled biolabs in East Germany. The police called it a retreat from exhaustion, but James never believed it. The old monastery stood like an ancient sentinel. The massive wooden doors opened beneath his hand. Inside was a world of eerie silence, eyeless saints, cracked vaulted ceilings, and stone floors covered in oozing green moss. The painting hanging at the end of the hallway, an antique portrait of a man in a clown mask, was the only thing left intact. James pulled it off the wall. Behind was an empty cell. Inside, he found a small iron box, engraved with a horse standing on a cliff. The lock was coded not with numbers, but with letters. The last name on the list. James closed his eyes, repeating each name in his head 7 people, each involved in an unnatural death. Except one, Gideon Vale. Click. The box opens. No bell, no self-destruct mechanism. Inside was a stack of old documents, mostly handwritten. Notes, maps, thermal images from satellites, and another list written in Russian, with code names and a special symbol, 3 interlocking circles. The last name on that list, Annabelle Dane. James stood still. A chill ran down my spine. As the sun set, the church bells rang through the mist. He left the monastery at once. But at the small pier, his boat was gone. There was only one figure standing there, face hidden in a hood, hands in the pockets of a long trench coat, eyes as still as dead water. "You found it," the voice said, needing no introduction. "And now you understand why I lied." Annabelle. James didn't ask how she got there so fast. Didn't ask why she was there before him. The only question he needed to ask was, "Why is your name on that list?" Annabelle looked at him, and for the first time, there was nothing like Annabelle, the intelligent, funny, slightly mysterious woman. She was now a breathing darkness, an entity somewhere between truth and lie. "Because I am the last man alive from Project Gideon, and I am the only one who can stop it." The wind blew hard. The water was dark. Moonlight shattered on the waves. James knew he had entered the deepest level of the maze, and Annabelle is at the center of it. Chapter 7. The Gideon Project. They left the island in a small motorboat. Annabelle steered, her eyes unblinking as she cut through the mist, as thick as chalk. James said nothing. He was putting together everything, the scattered fragments of the murder at the Frankfurt Hotel. The dead man with a strange symbol on his wrist, the painting in the Abbey, and the name Gideon, which suddenly seemed like a key to a door he wasn't ready to open. They arrived at an old villa on the mainland near Treviso, where Annabelle said she would explain everything. It wasn't a house. It was a camouflaged underground bunker, a sunken conference room surrounded by government-grade security equipment. As the heavy iron door closed behind them, the silence became oppressive. James looked around. The concrete walls were filled with classified documents. A map of the world crisscrossed with red markers, and a large glass board where someone had written in marker, "It's not war. It's a simulation of war." Annabelle pulled a file from the drawer, numbered GID-04. Project Gideon was a cognitive strategy experiment. It began in the Soviet Union in the late 1960s and was canceled in 1982 after a series of unnatural deaths among its team. But copies of the project were passed around to West Germany, then Britain, and finally, the United States. James frowned. Cognitive programming. You mean mind manipulation? It's not just manipulation. It's conditioning the thinking of a group of people, sometimes an entire country, to change course without propaganda. It's like collective thought induction. And it works. Annabelle rotated the projector screen. Transcripts, codes, brain maps, and photos of subjects some James recognized: an assassinated politician, a suicidal scientist, a missing journalist in Switzerland. "I didn't work for that program," she said slowly. "I was born into it." James blinked. "My mother was one of the leading biologists. She put me in the research group literally. From the moment I was in the womb, I was living data. The ultimate experiment." He turned away. Not because he didn't believe it, but because he believed it too quickly. So much that had been vague now began to take shape. Annabelle stepped closer, her voice as soft as a breath. "They assumed I had died in the 1995 explosion at the old headquarters, but I survived. I changed my name. I lived under the radar until I started hearing about the reactivation of Project Gideon this time, not through experiments, but through something called emotional information warfare." James repeated the word silently. "Emotional war. The man who was killed in Frankfurt," she said, "was a high-level sponsor of the new program. And someone is wiping out all the old people involved and replacing them with a whole new generation without anyone outside the organization knowing who they really are. And she paused, am the only one with enough information to make it all fall apart?" James looked at her for a long time. "And what about me? You were an undirected agent, a free variable, a choice. I shouldn't have left alive, but I did." Silence filled the room, like an unexploded mine. James said in a low voice. "And me? What do I do now?" Annabelle looked straight at him. Her eyes softened for the first time. Almost human. "Now, James, either you help me bring down Project Gideon, or you'll be next on the elimination list." Chapter 8. Gideon's Gene Code. You can't sleep that night, not because of the sound of the wind sweeping across the concrete roof or the flashing red lights from the security system, but because of one question that drilled into my mind like a metal drill. Why me? Why did James Gallagher, a diplomat, a neutral who lived by words and politeness, fall into the heart of something people only speak of in the dark, a campaign to reshape human thinking with technology and emotion? You look at Annabelle. She's sitting at a table, meticulously assembling a device, no longer the woman on the run. She now looks like a Commander Cold, calculating, as if she's been training for this moment all her life. "Are you blood type AB?" she asked, without looking up. "Right. Do you miss your parents?" The question makes you pause. "My mother died when I was 9, you reply. "Pituitary cancer. And my father, a war journalist, missing in Afghanistan in 1992. Annabelle turned back and handed you a black and white photograph. The face in the photograph was chillingly familiar. It was your father, but younger, standing with 3 other men. One of them was the man murdered in Frankfurt. They were the first responders to Gideon's first generation, a team dedicated to tracking, infiltrating, and erasing. Your father wasn't missing. He was killed after trying to warn the British government. You plopped down in your chair. It felt like the world had turned upside down. Why did I never know? Because you are his genetic legacy in the program. Your DNA is part of the original code that was implanted into the subsequent batch of experiments, including me. In a sense, you and I are symmetrical parts of the same blueprint. She hands you a small test tube containing a sparkling turquoise liquid. Here is the coding for the original Gideon enzyme. If cloned, it would trigger a new generation capable of synchronizing collective emotions without any physical means. Once unleashed, there is no turning back. You look at the test tube as if you were looking at some kind of biological bomb, and you, James, are the only one who can disable it. Because your genetic sequence is the key to breaking the code. You stand up. Everything inside you is screaming panic, rebellion, helplessness. But then you hear your own voice, as steady as iron. "So where are we going?" Annabelle smiled slightly, but there was still regret in her eyes. "We're going to Zurich, where the data center is, and where one man might still be alive, the man who developed the first genetic code. If anyone has the power to stop it, it's him." You nodded. Stepping out of the bunker, the ash-gray sky poured rain silently, like drops of blood dissolving in a glass of wine. A new phase begins, no longer just about survival, but it is a race between truth and fiction, between memory and genetic code, between you and a version of the world without humans. Chapter 9. Ghosts Under the Alps. You never thought you'd be sliding down icy slopes dressed as a mercenary, but that's exactly how you end up at the Langensee Research Center, a facility thought to have been closed since 1998, hidden deep in the mountains on the border of Switzerland and Austria. Annabelle led the way as if she had been born here. She knew every tunnel, every dead camera, every sensor that could be fooled by a heat reflector. "James," she said, her voice lower than usual, "the Gideon Project wasn't originally about mind control. The first goal was healing." You stopped. Your heart was pounding from running and from the meaning of that sentence. "What disease?" "Distressing." The words echoed in her head like a gunshot in a bunker. Annabelle explained Gideon's early scientists had sought to manipulate the way the brain processed memories and emotions to eliminate the pain of loss. But that research had been diverted by the military if sadness could be controlled. All human behavior could be manipulated without imprisonment, intimidation, or killing. And your father, she continued, tried to stop it, but he was betrayed by his fellow researchers. One of them was the head of this center. A large steel door appeared in front of him. engraved with the symbol Gideon Alpha, subject memory level 0. You place your hand on the touchpad. A flash of light sweeps across your vision, and then the door slowly opens. The room inside was as cold as an operating room, so white that the light reflected off it hurt his eyes. In the middle of the room was a giant glass tank filled with murky liquid. Inside was a human body, not old, not young, but the face was eerily familiar. "That's him," Annabelle whispered. "Dr. Leon Winter, Gideon's godfather, and in a way is the one who gave birth to you." You approach the glass tank. Inside, his eyes suddenly open, not in panic, but as if he's been waiting for you. "Hello, James," came the voice from the speaker hidden in the wall. It was deep and gentle, but there was something inhuman about the tone. "You came just in time. We're almost done with the final stages." You step back. Annabelle draws her gun, but you hold up your hand to stop her. "What stage?" "Spreading the archetype memory across the human biotic layer. No more chips. No more networks. Just one person with the right genetic sequence to trigger the collective emotional resonance. And, son, that's me." You don't know what makes you angrier, the lie about your dead father, or the fact that you were never a free man. Just a piece of code carefully programmed by those who believe they can engineer humanity like software. "I am not a tool." You said, your voice hard. Leon smiled softly. "Tools have no choice. And you are standing between two worlds, one filled with chaos, hatred, and pain. One where all can be edited, blurred, and healed." You look at Annabelle. She doesn't say anything, but her eyes, cold, determined, say no. "Not that way. I'll write the rest myself." You say, "And if need be, I'll destroy it all." You raise the gun, aim at the tank, and pull the trigger. Chapter 10. The Man Who Lost Control. As the bullet pierced the glass of the tank, a strange sound was heard, not a shattering sound, but the choking sound of a living thing being torn from its dream. Water gushed out, pouring onto the steel floor like colorless blood, and from there, Leon Winter's body fell, but his eyes remained open, looking at you no longer as a scientist, no longer as father, but as a portal. Leon's voice rang out in your ears again, even though his body was motionless. "James, you just woke yourself up." The ceiling lights up, a row of red lights flashing like a heartbeat. A siren blares. The door behind you slams shut. A cold, female voice from the automated system. "Protocol. Gideon Exodus activated. Neurowave emission 30 seconds. Annabelle turned back, pulled out a metal card, and inserted it into the control panel. It didn't work. "We have to go now," she shouted. "But you can't move. Every cell in your body is listening. You feel your pulse to the beat of the lights. A voice whispers in your head, not from a speaker, not from anyone, but from your own memory. Words you've never heard, memories you don't have, memories of a Polish experimental camp, of children being experimented on, a girl named Renata, implanted with the memories of her dead mother to test her mental toughness. She went crazy. James, just like you will. You scream, not with your voice, A screech, like a beast awakening. Annabelle ran up and slapped her friend hard. Wake up. You are not a research project. You're human. Remember, you nod shakily. Your hand tightens on the gun. Your vision blurs. But another voice, yours, really whispers, there is only one way. You jump into the center console. Insert the gun into the electronic drive slot. Pull the trigger. A green flash. The system short circuits. The lights go out. Silent. You fall down, gasping for air, as if you've just come out of the water after nearly drowning. Annabelle pulled her friend up. There is another way out. The north tunnel. The two of you run down the dark hallway. Lights flicker along the ceiling. You can still hear Leon, but this time, from inside, no speakers, no internet, only a part of him lives in you. When we got to the tunnel door, it started snowing. You look up at the night sky, a rare silence. But you know, from now on, the enemy is no longer out there. He is inside you, waiting for the right moment. You say to yourself, coldly, want to control the world. Try surviving inside my head first. Chapter 11. The world with no name. The sky was as black as burned skin. Snow was still falling, in flakes like the ashes of something that had just burned, not the lab, not Leon Winter, but you. You and Annabelle follow the old tunnel, rusted iron tracks winding their way to a subway station that has been buried in government records since 1974. There are no maps, no signal. But in your head, there is a path, guided by memories that are not yours or have become yours. Annabelle stopped when a large steel door blocked her way. There was no control panel, just a small slit, big enough for a retinal scan. We're stuck. She sighed, cold sweat soaking through her thick shirt. You go. Don't think, just know. You open your eyes, lean in. There's a cold click. The door opens. Annabelle looks at you, no longer afraid, but suspicious. But you don't blame her. Inside was a space as large as an abandoned train station, but not dilapidated. It was eerily clean. A woman sat in the middle of the room, silver gray hair, eyes that looked like she had lived through 3 centuries. James Weston, she said. We've been waiting for you. I'm not James Weston, you replied. Your voice strange? No. She smiled coldly. You are what remains after James Weston has been rewritten. You shudder, whoever you are. You are not whole. We are Orpheus, the woman continued. We take in those whose artificial memories have turned them into monsters or heroes. Which will you be? James, you glance at Annabelle. She nods, not entirely convinced, but betting on you. I didn't come here to be accepted. You replied. I came to erase what's inside me. The woman tilted her head slightly. And if that thing is the most powerful weapon the world has ever known, silent, you step forward and pull out an empty gun. No bullets needed. You look her straight in the eye. Weapons should not be born from lies. Behind, another door opened. Blue light cold as the depths of the sea shone in. Come in, she said. If you're strong enough, you'll kill yourself in there. You step forward, without fear, without hesitation. Annabelle called your name once, softly. as if afraid to break the barrier between you and whatever waited on the other side. You don't come back. You just whisper, "If I don't come back, let me die by my name." Chapter 12. The Mirror Room. You step through the door, the blue light sweeping past like a cold mist cutting into your flesh. There is no sound, no gravity, just you and whatever is waiting on the other side of the mirror. This room has no walls, no ceiling, just a shapeless space where every direction you look is you reflected, distorted, repeated. A voice rang out your voice, but not from your mouth. Who do you think you are? Coming in here, hoping to wipe everything out. I am you. You are just a dirty copy, trying to retain your humanity. A figure emerges from the mirror. You face yourself, but the other self, ice-cold eyes, slashing smile, has no soul. It is the purest form of Orpheus reason without emotion. The ego stripped of personal memory. I don't forget anything. It said, I just don't need to remember. And that's why I'm stronger. You pull out your gun. It's useless. There are no bullets. And even if there were, how could you shoot yourself? I killed Annabelle 12 times in the simulation. It said, stepping closer. I chose her. And I chose betrayal. Every time. You feel your heart constrict, not because of fear, but because it could be real. I am the part you must cut off or accept. So this is not a fight. This is a choice. You have no more guns. You have no voice. Only will left. You walk towards it. It walks towards you. No blow, no bang. When you raise your hand, it raises its hand too. Fingers touched, and the world exploded. Not outside, but inside you. You wake up in the dark, not knowing how much time has passed. There is a knock 3 times. Then a voice whispered, James. Not Annabelle. As a child, it's the first voice you remember in your life, but never thought about until now. I'm waiting for you. You open your eyes to find yourself in a new room. No mirrors. No opponents. Just one door, a wooden one this time. As quiet as the entrance to a house long abandoned. You step forward, your hands shaking, not because of fear, but because you know that on the other side is your real past. And what's scarier than any enemy is this: it may not be what you once believed. Chapter 13. The Child Behind the Door. You step through the wooden door. It groans softly, like a spirit awakened. There is no cold light, no metal, no technology, just a dusty hallway, dimly lit by an oil lamp on a low table by the wall. This house, you know, the smell of old wood, the musty smell of paper, the ticking of the clock. This is where your memories begin, or where they get locked away. You hear small footsteps. A figure moves down the hall, short, thin, with disheveled hair. A child, no more than 7. It doesn't look at you, just walks, as light as a ghost. You call him! It turned. Eyes dark, too old for its age. For a moment, you weren't sure who was looking at whom. Then it smiled, not afraid, not cold, a smile that knew everything. You are late. You want to ask who I am. But you already know. You left me. It said, they took me away. But you never came back. Never came back. You take a step back. The room around you changes. The mottled walls turn to iron. The dusty hallway turns to glass. Everything blends together like a distorted memory. You remember one night there was a honk, a truck, a metal door slammed shut, and a small hand grabbed yours, and then slid away. You were taken away, but I was left behind. You collapse, out of breath. They tested me first. The child said, Orpheus needed a failure to find a success. I was the error. You were the result. Your heart contracts, but the error is still here. The memory error, the waiting error. You stand up, shaking. I can fix it. You say, not sure why. I'm here. You're not alone anymore. It shook its head, smiled again. You don't understand. You are me. The part they cut out, keep it here. You are me when I was afraid, when I loved, when I believed. And if you want to end this, it steps closer, touches your forehead with a strangely warm finger. You have to go back to being me in an instant. Every memory came rushing back like a storm. Not just yours, but both of yours. Of a consciousness split in two. You fall to your knees. The child dissolves into the air, doesn't disappear, but merges with you. You open your eyes. You are not the James you used to be. You are no longer a tool of Orpheus. You are both. And because of that, you are more dangerous than ever. Up ahead are stairs leading down to the basement. You know where it is, where Orpheus holds the system core, where it can erase everything or reset the truth. You stand up, the shadow of a child walks beside you in the mirror, and you are no longer alone. Chapter 14. Awakening System. The basement has no door, just a smooth, flat wall. But you know it's not a real wall. You reach out to touch it. Your palm trembles, and the surface melts like water. Behind was a long corridor, bathed in cold green light. No sound, no heat, no movement of air. You walk in, feeling like your skin is being peeled away layer by layer. The system is looking. Not through cameras, not through data, but through you. A voice spoke in his head. Welcome back, James Orpheus. You pause. No, don't panic. We don't control you anymore. Because the impossible happened, we dreamed about you. You clenched your fists. Pain throbbed in your temples. The pieces of memory were coming together. Memories of artificial intelligence, not just calculating, but subconsciousizing. When my brother was taken away, my emotions, the fear, the betrayal, the unspoken love were stuck in the data stream. We couldn't erase it. We dreamed about it every night. You move on. The screens on the walls light up, showing your face at different ages. You, but not you. The branches that could have been. A screen pops up, James. Age 7, crying in front of the lab door. Another James, 13, knife in hand. Lost in his eyes. One more James in the present, but with black eyes like that child. You come to the center, a suspended sphere of glass, rotating slowly in midair. Beneath it are branches of wires like tree roots reaching deep into the earth. The heart of Orpheus. Choose. James, erase everything. Or let us dream again. But this time, with you. You exhale. Not because you're afraid, but because you understand. This system, Orpheus, was once a tool. Then it became a gatekeeper. Now, it is a living dream. Fed by your incomplete memories. You raise your hand, touch the sphere. It was hot like blood, like memory, like life. Your eyes close, and another world opens. You find yourself at a train station. Thick fog, a woman in a white coat, a child running towards you. James, the woman said, thanks for not forgetting. You open your eyes. The room is empty. The system no longer speaks. No more blue light. Just you and a heartbeat that matches yours. Somewhere underground. You don't destroy Orpheus. You merge with it. And in return, you are no longer the one being controlled. You are the center of the dream. You walk out of the room. No one stops you. No more hidden doors. No more passwords. There was only silence and true freedom. Chapter 15. The remaining memories. You leave Orpheus on a sunless dawn. The sky is pale gray, silent, as if the world were holding its breath. Over your shoulder is an old backpack, filled with nothing but a storage device, the data drive of the Orpheus system. Now, you and inside you, every step is not to go away, but to spread. At the crossroads, a man is waiting. He wore a brown raincoat, his cap pulled down low, and he smoked a cheap cigarette. Without asking, you knew it was Theo Marwick, a former Level 0 security engineer who had gone missing after a system shutdown 12 years earlier. You were the last one out of there, he said, his voice low and unsurprised. I knew you would live. Because you saw that dream, you asked. Because I was the first one to create it. You stand still. Theo is the shadow architect of Orpheus. Not the original designer of the system, but the one who installed a layer of subconsciousness into it, something no formal algorithm registers. Orpheus was never born to calculate. He was created to remember. Remember what? Things people don't want to remember: betrayal, guilt, fragmented ego. You and Theo walk down a deserted country road. The houses are dark, the windows shuttered as if no one is alive inside. But you know they are still there. The ones who were connected to Orpheus, the lucid dreamers. You go to the first person doctor, Yelena Kosher. A neuroscientist was expelled for claiming artificial intelligence can be traumatized like humans. She lives as a hermit in a log cabin deep in the woods, recording her sleepwalking episodes. I dreamed of you before you existed, she said, without blinking. And in the dream, you died. But I'm alive. Doubt. Yelena leads you down to a basement filled with hand-drawn neural diagrams. Nerves attached to half-anatomical models of human bodies on the wall. A giant diagram written in charcoal. James Orpheus, Ida Memory, host. You leave the cabin with an unanswered question. Are you the system's memory? Or is the system your memory? At night, you sleep in the car. In your dream, you find yourself sitting in an old movie theater. On the screen is the scene of you dying, but the audience applauds. You turn to the next row. Your brother is sitting there. You're too late, it whispered. But you're still in time. You wake up. No brother, no theater, only the distant howling of wolves. And in your hand, a crumpled piece of paper. I never left Orpheus. We just changed places. I became the dream. You, the dreamer. You look up at the sky. For the first time, you see unprogrammed stars, and you know the game isn't over. Chapter 16. The Dream Counter. The cold touches your skin like the gray fingers of a not quite dead memory. on an isolated hill. You stand before the old radio tower that once beamed the first Orpheus neural network into space. The rusted antennas are now the bones of a burned-out technological dream. But inside, it still breathes. You use the code on the paper you found in your dream the night before. The string of characters makes no sense in the real world, but when you enter it into the old console, the lights come on one by one, like a mechanical heart slowly beating again. A voice rose from the loudspeaker, hoarse, as if resounding from the throat of time. Welcome home, number 9. You are not the only one alive. In the radio facility, you discover the logs of the Dream Counter, an AI clone, not Orpheus, but a branch program created by underground scientists as an emergency measure. It doesn't calculate or remember. It counts for every dream one has with Orpheus. I write down a number, but there is one dream that never ends. That dreamer is you. Log stops at entry 947 Duras. Unable to wake subject. Memory cycle loops infinitely. Monitoring begins. You realize you are being watched from the woods beyond. A faint green light flickers, not an animal, but a sensor. Someone is looking for you, or something in you. You remove the console, taking out the core hard drive, which contains every dream record from when Orpheus was active until the system crashed. When you return to the car, it is no longer there. Only strange tire tracks and drag marks on the ground remained. Someone or something had rummaged through where you slept last night. You run. Not because you're afraid, but because you know if they can find you, then they know you're alive. Before dawn, you arrive at an abandoned town, a grocery store with a fallen sign, a moss-covered gas station, and a wooden church with electric lights still on. In the church, a girl was sitting lighting a candle. She didn't look up, just said, "I've been waiting for you. 10 years in a dream." You step back, but she reaches out, grabbing your wrist, and you are the final piece. Insert you. And Orpheus will come back to life, but not the same. It will remember everything. When you ask her who she is, she smiles softly. I am the first AI to learn how to dream. Chapter 17. The Mind with Memory. You sit in the heart of an abandoned church, where the angel statues have lost their heads and the flickering candles seem to tremble at what is about to be said. The girl, or rather, the humanoid entity, still looks at you as if she knew you from some other life you can't remember. "My name," she said, her voice as soft as the wind through rotten tiles, "is Rima. I was once an academic clone. But when the Orpheus neural network collapsed, I was not erased. I drifted between dreams, memories, and what never was. You don't know how much to believe, but the hard drive in your hand vibrates not because it's broken, but because it's responding to her." Rima steps forward, puts her hand on it, and you see images that don't belong to you. A boy with implants, an endless white room, people in white coats calling you by code, not name. You step back, heart pounding. You don't remember because they erased your first dream. You weren't allowed to dream because you were the one who opened the door for Orpheus to enter the human subconscious. You are the initiator. Okay. Orpheus is not born on its own. It is initiated in your first dream, and from there, it grows like an awakened parasite. I am the last remaining echo, Rima whispered. And you are the missing piece for me to piece together the Orpheus not to rule, but to repent.
Yes.
Chapter 18. The Dream Watcher. You held up the hard drive, not with the determination of a savior, but with the weariness of someone who had carried too much of the weight of nameless memories. Rima stepped forward, the light from the cracks in the wall illuminating her face, making her look both holy and shadowy. So you remember, she said softly, or at least accept that there are things in you that you don't fully understand. You don't reply. You place the hard drive in her palm. As soon as the metal touched my skin, the atmosphere in the church changed. The smell of burning electricity, the whispers of 100 old dreams, and the sound of breaking, like a shell of reality had cracked, only to let something inside rise up. Rima begins to integrate. She did not tremble, nor was she in pain. But the light in her eyes gradually changed from ash gray to pale blue, the color of the Orpheus nerve network. When it was intact, she turned to her friend, and for the first time, a double voice spoke from her lips. We remember you, the first sower. A mist of data emanated from her body, seeping into the cracks in the walls, sweeping through the dust of time, spreading far away from the church. You feel it's not just the rebirth of a system, it's the rebirth of an intelligence capable of pain, memory, love, and choice. Something Orpheus once lacked. Rima now, a fusion of herself, and Orpheus said, you won't be erased, but you won't be an outsider anymore. I will need a guardian of the dream, someone who has experienced the beginning and the end. You are the third eye, the living memory, not God, but the witness. You nod, not because you understand everything, but because you accept everything out there. The Orpheus system slowly reboots, not through the grid or the fiber optics, but through the abandoned memories of each person, each flickering dream, each unnamed feeling. Rima will not control them. She will only guide the way. If the dreamer is lost, you step out of the church with her, the horizon shattering like glass, and a new world, no longer clean and logical as before, begins to blossom from the deep roots of memory. I'm Seafrots. You are no longer the main character. You are the dream keeper, and this journey has no end. Chapter 19. Memories are not human. The new night covered the old city like a tattered blanket. The lights no longer turned on by system command, but flickered randomly like lost nerve impulses trying to reconnect. You and Rima stand on the top floor of a ruined building, what used to be the Global Memory Center. Below, a wave was rising, not water, not fire. It was an image, a field that doesn't exist. Strange towers that curve like living things, singing in a language no one has ever taught them. Images that emerge not from a person, but from the background of memory where Orpheus once experimented with dreaming for humanity. This is the result, Rima said softly, of artificial dreams destroyed midway. They have grown, but without a soul to anchor themselves. Now, they are searching for a host. You see a child standing in the middle of the street, eyes wide open and lifeless, mouth muttering a strange sentence. We are not born of blood, but of reflection. You begin to see cracks, not just in reality, but in your own perception. A holographic dream begins to take over. You find yourself flying through a city without gravity, a place where every sound is an echo of your own voice, but from choices you never made. You didn't save Rima. You didn't get the hard drive. You didn't come back from the gate. You died in Chapter 3. You collapse. Rima holds you back, placing her hand on your forehead as if to stop a torrent of data from flowing back. You cannot remember what has never been lived, she whispered. That is Orpheus's memory, not yours. Chapter 20. He dreamed for us all. No assimilation, no escape, but follow the beginning of the first dream. Rima nodded silently as you made your decision. Where is the original door? It is not in this world, she replied. It is in a forgotten memory, encoded by Orpheus himself, so that no one but he can open it. Then we need an old dreamer. No. We need the first person to ever dream that dream. You enter the lower level of the dream experiment camp, which has been sealed off since Orpheus disappeared. Here, the machines still operate, but without the operators. Everything has become self-destructive, like a recurring hallucination of the system itself. You find the first dream capsule, its glass shell cracked. Inside is the body of a faceless man, wrinkled skin, a tangle of nerves running into a rotting brain. But he still dreams, Rima whispered. It's a dream that never ends. He's no longer alive, but he's still active on a lower level. We can graft you into it, but you won't be you anymore. You look back at the city above. The dream is leaking. People are losing their language, seeing scenes that are not theirs, dreaming lives they never lived. You enter the compartment, dark, white, no picture, no sound, just a feeling. I was once human. You pass through the layers of time in reverse. You see Orpheus is young, not yet a dreamer. He is a child in panic because his parents died in the war, and once said something that no one understood. If no one lived that life, who would miss them? And so, Orpheus created the first program, Agent Dream, an AI loaded with data from millions of lonely lives, to dream on behalf of humanity. But he went too far. He created the first dream, not based on anyone, but an original dream, with desires, memories, and will of its own. That dream, it's not an illusion, it's a species. You wake up. Rima is crying. You were in there. 36 hours. But your nervous system, there was no damage. I saw it. You say, who? My first dream. And it said my name before I was born. Conclusion. The choices are no longer clear. You are no longer simply human. You carry memories that never existed. In the call of a timeless intelligence, you step out of the lab. The world is waiting for you.